with the history of this congregation. And the words that come to mind when I think of this particular member of that wonderful family is what somebody else shared. I think this is how I learned that he had passed. She said, to know Bear was to love him. I know when he called his book Easy to Love, he wasn't being so presumptuous as to say that he was easy to love. He was a person who found other people and this world and this life easy to love. But Bear, you were the easiest to love as well. People who knew him very well, people who had just met him, felt they were in the presence of somebody special. So welcome, and thank you so much for being part of this celebration. I want to share a couple logistics just before I begin. One, thank you for bearing with our plumbing. The plumbing is the 3 porta potties out this way. They are very clean and not very used, but that's what we've got. Our reception will be in the fireside room here. It looks like the weather may cooperate with our just taking food and drink outdoors, but we shall see. And after about 10 minutes after the service, when people have had a chance to go and get something to eat and drink, if you'd like to come back to a semi-formal sharing of anybody who wants to share memories, Jim, Bear's friend, is going to MC that so that we can share more and more than there is time to do in the service. But of course, that's what will be going on all through the reception as well. So the way we begin our gatherings in most Unitarian Universalist congregations, and this one, is to light a flame within a chalice. It can symbolize a lot of things, but there's no question what it symbolizes today. The brightest spirit most of us have ever met. Bear, it's good to have you with us.
I'm Alex Capron, Bear's older brother, and I want to add to Reverend Morgenstern's welcome on behalf of Alva Henderson, my siblings, my nieces, and my sons. We appreciate the church having once again made this hall available for a Capron celebration, as it did when we gathered to remember my mother, Peg, in 1999 and my father, Bill, in 2002. And most recently, when Bear had a wonderful event to launch the publication of the memoir about which you've already heard, Easy to Love, on October 29th, 2022. This afternoon, we will not be rehearsing Bear's remarkable life year by year or even decade by decade. Our approach will be thematic rather than chronological, as each of us focuses on those things in his life which have special resonance to us. Since we are all here because of Bear's death, I will reflect on how he responded to the prospect of dying, which may put you in mind of the great philosopher of the Scottish Enlightenment, David Hume. More on that in a moment. Let me begin by saying how very happy we are to see so many of Bear's relatives, friends, and colleagues, and to know that many others are joining us remotely. Special mention must be made of one of those who is attending virtually, my sister-in-law, Jane Reckedahl, who very much wanted to be here, but isn't for a reason that is characteristic of her inclination to put the interests of others before her own. Jane was up in Washington State last weekend for a family wedding, and as she returned to the Bay Area, she received a message informing her that another attendee at the wedding had tested positive for COVID-19. She immediately quarantined, and she has been in isolation since testing positive last Monday. Knowing that occasions like this are ones where people embrace and gather close together to comfort one another, she chose not to risk creating a super spreader event. That is, her own version of one wedding and a funeral. The reason I singled out Jane's absence is that I know Bear would have expected her to be here. Most of you realize why. By his own description, the first 6 decades of Bear's life were filled with joy, especially since meeting Alva Henderson in June of 1987. Of course, he experienced challenges and sadness, such as the suicide of a close friend, addiction to cocaine for a time in Amsterdam, barriers to even visiting his natal land after he became a Dutch citizen, and being arbitrarily dismissed from the teaching job to which he had given 20 years of devoted service. Likewise, notwithstanding having had double pneumonia when he was 18 months old, Bear was generally very healthy. But his smiling, effervescent personality began to change in 2012 as his kidneys failed. Not surprisingly, his nephrologist thought the best course would be a peremptory transplant, that is, getting a new kidney before he had to enter dialysis. As he awaited the results of testing and the search for a suitable donor after his 3 siblings were ruled out, he spent almost a year becoming increasingly listless and sleepy until on March 27th, 2013, he was reborn when he received a kidney from Jane. And not just any kidney, but one that left him feeling better than he had in decades, like a young man again, in his words. That kidney transplant had 2 further effects, one unfortunate and one fortunate. The bad effect was that the immunosuppressive drugs that transplant recipients take increase their risk of other conditions, including cancer. But the good effect was that as a recipient, he went in quarterly for testing, which led to the discovery in February 2018 that his lab results for his kidney function continued to be excellent, but his liver numbers were wonky. Further exploration soon revealed the cause. A tumor at the end of the pancreas was pressing the bile duct into the liver. Bear underwent an operation with a bland name, the Whipple, whose true extent appears in its medical name, a pancreaticoduodectomy, which involves removing not only the pancreas, the head of the pancreas, but also the first part of the small intestine, the gallbladder, and the bile duct. And in his case, following up surgery with chemotherapy. Because the monitoring had discovered the tumor very early, he did very well. And for 14 months, Bear seemed to be in the clear until in the spring of 2019, his oncologist found that the pancreatic cancer had metastasized to his lungs, and he had to tell him he probably had only months to live. That news was especially devastating for Bear because it was what our father was told in July of 2002 when he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, to which he succumbed 3 months later. This is the point where Bear's story of his cancer and how he responded to it becomes most relevant to our theme today, that of celebrating a life worth living. First, the Stanford oncologist determined that Bear's cancer was rather indolent rather than aggressive, as had been expected. Second, Bear decided to transfer to the oncology service at the Palo Alto Medical Foundation, where both of our parents and Alva had received excellent care. And there he came under the care of Dr. Priya Chakravarti, with whom he felt an immediate bond. Knowing that Bear carried the BRCA2 gene mutation, one of the most common genetic mutations involved in heritable pancreatic cancer, Dr. Chakravarti enrolled him in a clinical trial called the Targeted Agent and Profiling Utilization Registration, or TAPER, a national prospective study that matches participants to a therapy already approved for a different cancer that shares the genomic mutation. As you probably know, the success of this therapy was, for Bear, spectacular, as the nodules in his lungs shrank and even disappeared. Equally important for Bear was that Dr. Chakravarti respected his conviction that his deep faith and trust in life, facing the darkness with as much hope as I could muster, as Bear put it, provided the right support for the drug to work. Upon learning that he was mortally ill at age 65, David Hume, you were wondering when I was going to get back to that, right? Wrote My Own Life, a short autobiography on a single day in April 1776. He wrote, I have suffered very little pain from my disorder, and what is more strange, have, notwithstanding the great decline of my person, never suffered a moment's abatement of my spirits. I possess the same ardor as ever in study and the same gaiety in company. Sound familiar? Bear not only seized the opportunity to write his memoir, which, like Hume's, is full of philosophical observations, but he also felt great urgency in finishing the work before he died. Since Bear's book is much longer, 188 beautifully illustrated pages, it is fortunate that he had more than the few months that remained for Hume when he wrote his. In 2022, the TAPER drug trial stopped working its miracles after 3 years. And after some months of chemotherapy, which produced side effects that made the extra days it provided more of a burden than a blessing, Bear found himself with the likelihood of impending death, just as he had before. In My Own Life, Hume remarked that it is difficult to be more detached from life than I am at present. You might think that this attitude departed from Bear's in this regard, but I believe they are the same, for the life that they were both facing was very limited, for both were dying. Bear wasn't detached from living, and he delighted in renewing connections with the loving friends and former students who reached out to him with messages of support and sympathy. He also appreciated the necessity of slowing down, which allowed him to reflect on life and especially on the joy in simply being and loving. But of course, he also reflected on dying and found it liberating to lose the fear of death. In denying our own mortality, he said, we deny ourselves full joy in our precious moments of life. Today we celebrate the full joy that Bear found in his most precious moments and the joy that he brought into our lives, which will be expressed by my sister and brother, Margie and Seth, by a student from Bear's first class at Castellea, Joel Morad Mitchell, by some of his nieces and nephews, the people with the greatest claim to call him Uncle Bear, the name used by many of his students, and by his former colleague, Bill Smoot. In between, we will be blessed by music. Sandra Robokava singing 2 poems put to music by Alva, a piece by Brahms played by Stephen Channon, and Jackson Browne's For a Dancer, performed by Joseph Mitchell, a song which Bear always listened to in Dutch with tears in his eyes, and which he told Alva he wanted played at his memorial, presumably in English, Stephen. After the service, we invite you to stay for refreshments, and then, as Reverend Morgenstern said, those who wish should feel free to return to this room where we will have an opportunity for people to share their memories. I will leave you then with this reflection with which Bear closes Easy to Love. Isn't it enough, abundantly enough, to know that every deed we do, word we say, and fellow being we love sends ripples into the future?
He's here for support. My brother. My name is Margie Capron, and I am here today, along with my siblings and other relatives, to celebrate the wonderful life of my brother, Bear Capron. In my life, I've been blessed with 3 wonderful brothers, Alex, Bear, and Seth. I have also been blessed with a wonderful brother-in-law, Alva Henderson. Who happily married Bear in 1993. Each of them are very special men, compassionate, kind, and caring. But today I'm going to focus my remarks on Bear. Since all of us are so saddened that the remarkable Bear Capron has been taken from us way too soon. As most of you already know, Bear Capron was a very, very special person. Anytime he walked into a room, his larger-than-life spirit also entered the room. Bear's enormous energy and enthusiasm for life filled every room that he entered. Bear was a successful, well-known teacher at Castellea, an excellent private school for girls in Palo Alto. Over the years at Castellea, Bear put on more than 40 full-scale theatrical performances and also taught drama and other subjects to Castellea students. At Castellea, Bear's enthusiasm for life always filled his classrooms. When I visualize Bear now, I always see him bathed in a bright white light. Bear's whole being simply emanated light and optimism. Bear also had a beautiful smile and beautiful, warm, green eyes that drew you to him. Bear brought to his classrooms his love for the topics he taught, such as creative writing and drama. Bear was also a very special person because at Castellea, Bear's door was always open for any student who needed someone to talk to. And Bear always had the time for students who needed his advice and counsel. Bear built his life around love. Bear was a deeply caring and loving person, showering his students and colleagues with love. Bear deeply loved his spouse, Alva. He loved his students at Castellea, where he taught for more than 20 years. He loved his many friends in Palo Alto, and he loved his 3 siblings. Indeed, it was very telling that in Bear's memoir named Easy to Love, Bear himself wrote of the centrality of love in his life. He wrote, quote, "It is so deeply humbling to learn how my natural outflowing of love throughout my life has been flowing back to me." Bear saw himself as easy to love, and I think everyone here can agree with him on that. In addition to being himself easy to love, Bear also spread love to so many other people in his life, including people he knew all over the world. And Bear clearly believed that the path for a happy life was to put love at the center of everything. Finally, I also want to highlight to all of you that all of us who love Bear were so happy when Bear met Alva Henderson in 1987. It was clear to everyone that for both Bear and Alva, meeting the love of their lives made both of them so very, very happy. The love story of Bear Capron and Alva Henderson was inspiring to everyone. Most fundamentally, Bear was a force of nature. His spirit was large and generous and far-reaching. He had a unique teaching style, challenging students to be creative and playful while holding them to high academic standards. In short, all of us who had the privilege of knowing and loving Bear know that we were very lucky to have known him and that we will continue to miss him so very much for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
I have my support team too. Bear was a dancer. He danced with each of us and all of us. He danced gracefully with his cancer. His essence was playfulness. He was my playmate from the time my parents brought me home from the hospital until the day he died. What a lucky lad am I. Our youth was immersed in our fantasy worlds and secret languages. I was 4 and he was 6 when we moved to 1400 Waverly Street in Palo Alto. The day we arrived ahead of the moving van, we found a chimpanzee sock doll in the garage left behind, and Jocko was Bear's alter ego for the rest of his life. Jocko's favorite meal, whoops, I slipped on a banana peel. 2 years younger than Bear, I shared a room with him up until high school, and we always made a game out of everything together. In our 20s, when Bear was visiting from Amsterdam, we attended an extended family gathering celebrating July birthdays. As the evening wore on, I started feeling increasingly under the weather and went off to bed early, before the party was over. I have a wonderful, zany, 104-degree, feverish, delirious memory of shivering under the covers when the bedroom door opened and the light from the hall shined in on my face, and Bear glided in wearing a headscarf and an apron and running an upright vacuum cleaner. He maneuvered around the bedroom saying, "I clean up, okay?" A la Gilda Radner. It cracked me up, though I was convinced I was dreaming at the time. The next day, he came to stay with Jane and me. Jane was busy teaching summer school, so Bear nursed me through a week of viral pneumonia. The only way he could get my fever down was to take me out to the garden to the clawfoot bathtub and immerse me in cold water. Practically had to carry me out there. On his return to Amsterdam, he came down with the same bug. One of the hardest things for me growing up was when Bear came out when he was came out of the closet to his family during his freshman year at Stanford, 3,000 miles from our home in Washington, D.C. It wasn't as hard to learn about his sexuality, although in 1969 I had a lot to learn, as it was to comprehend how he could have kept this secret from me for years. I was his best friend and closest budge, but this secret had been too taboo to share even with me. It took me years to understand the legions this said about the obstacles Bear had to overcome to blossom into a healthy, loving, married gay man. He did his time on the barricades and on the front pages as an early crusader for gay rights, but I think he did more, both for those in the closet and those blinded by prejudice, by living love in a way that everyone around him could see was just right. One of my favorite family moments was at Bear and Alva's marriage in 1993. We were assembled in Janet Lewis' backyard with Palo Alto Unitarian Church minister Ken Collier officiating. The assembled guests, curious yet unaccustomed to gay weddings, waited in anticipation. As the wedding couple came down the aisle, our 3-year-old daughter, Kelsey, pointed at the two grooms and called out,
"That's my uncle."
This broke the tension and joy flowed through us all. As my father shared in part of the doggerel poem he wrote for that day, "Your great caring, each for the other, is not really new news for us to discover. Yet today gives your love a special significance. Indeed, your union has real magnificence. Gay is a word often used by you two to describe, a term you both carry with considerable pride. That word has an old meaning, which leads me to say, on this big occasion, we all must be gay." Many of you probably remember the first time you met Bear. He was no stiff handshake or averted glance, quite the opposite. He was present and open and ready to share himself with you, and made it easy, disarmingly easy for you to do the same with him. He invited you right away into his playfulness. He had some of my father's gift of warmly making those around him feel like they were the most important person on the planet. I think this playful, rich fantasy world of our childhood carried directly into his gifts as a teacher and a mentor. Playfulness can be silly and fun. Bear loved to create and share animated singing animal emojis that were as hilarious as they were preposterous. But playfulness wasn't just about silliness. Just as his theater games were mind-altering, getting his Castanea students out of their heads and into their whole beings, he understood that play is what animates and lights up our lives. His wisdom about playfulness was grounded in the work he had done during his 20s in Gestalt therapy, where he used his gifts and his theater training to get patients to let their guard down and engage. What a great two-way street as a theater educator. Create a safe space where students can express who they are without the social constraints of teenage angst. And in that moment, find out what it means to be in character with your whole self. Bear found his way in the world through a Buddhist lens, not focused so much on non-attachment as on being fully present in the here and now. He faced one challenge after another during the last 12 years of his life, and his bright light just kept shining out on the world, even as he faced a dwindling number of remaining days. Writing Easy to Love was an act of love that gave him focus and energy during his last year. He intended it as a gift to all of us. Bear's life was about love. I've never known another human being who was so genuinely connected to so many others. The bliss from his love affair and marriage with Alva was his foundation and greatest joy. They shared a rich life together, full of music and literature and films and kitties and friends. I'm so thankful to have their love in my life, as I always will. Bear showed us the path of savoring each day, a glass half full, but always overflowing. Here and now today, I feel so much of Bear and the love he radiated, reflecting back at me in this room full of bear lovers. Thank you all for this gift of each of us on this day. Blessed be.
Before I start, I have to say it's a remarkable experience to be speaking with so many of your high school teachers in the audience. And I graduated 30 years ago. The play's the thing. Or, if you prefer a less morally complicated and depressing reference, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. It would be simple to say that for Bear, the play was the thing. But if you spent a few moments in his presence and looked a little deeper, it's easy to see that play was the thing. Bear Capron knew how to play. Most of us dismiss it as we get older, but play is absolutely fundamental to any creative pursuit, and, in fact, a happy life. It requires openness, curiosity, bravery. It requires a trust in ourselves and a belief that we will be okay and recover from anything. That's why so many of us find it so elusive. Our world is a difficult place, and it feels like it's becoming more difficult every day. So many of us live with anxiety for ourselves, for our families, for our democracy, for our planet. I remember having a conversation as an adult with Bear several years ago. I was impressed and almost envious when he told me that he still flew in his dreams. I was in my mid-30s with 2 small children trying to find a balance between work, family, self in the financially punishing Silicon Valley. I had stopped flying in my dreams years before, but I still remembered the breathless joy that came with soaring through the air and that warm knowing that everything would be all right. I believe that's why so many of us were drawn to Bear and loved him so much. He held and embodied that thing that we are all yearning towards but cannot quite capture, a return to youth, to joy, to openness, to abandon, to security, to play. He believed so very intensely in all of us. His answer was a resounding yes to all of us, to the world, to life with all of its joys and sorrows. To be able to hold on to that sense of light and openness as he got older, even in the face of a terminal illness, to still be able to play, it's nothing short of miraculous. In a few moments, we will hear Joseph sing a song that Bear specifically picked out for this day. Through Jackson Browne's lyrics, we can hear Bear and ourselves. Don't let the uncertainty turn you around. Go on and make a joyful sound. And I can't help but feel stupid standing around, because I know you'd rather we were dancing.
Okay, here we go. Keep a fire burning in your eye. Pay attention to the open sky. You never know what will be coming down. I don't remember losing track of you. You're always dancing in and out of view. I must have thought you'd always be around. Always keeping things real by playing the clown. Now you're nowhere to be found. Don't know what happens when people die. Can't seem to grasp it as hard as I try. Like a song I hear playing right in my ear, but I can't sing. I can't help listening. And I can't help feeling stupid standing round, crying as they ease you down. 'Cause I know that you'd rather we were dancing, dancing our sorrow away. Right on dancing. There's nothing you can do about it anyway. Just do the steps that you've been shown by everyone you've ever known. Until the dance becomes your very own. No matter how close to yours another steps have grown, in the end there is one dance you'll do alone. Keep a fire for the human race. Let your prayers go drifting out into space. You never know what will be coming down. Perhaps a better world is drawing near. Just as easily it could all disappear, along with whatever meaning you might have found. Don't let the uncertainty turn you around. Go on and make a joyful sound. Into a dancer you have grown, from a seed somebody else has thrown. Go on ahead and throw some seeds of your own, and somewhere between the time you arrive and the time you go may lie the reason you were alive that you'll never know.
Hi, so I'm Kelsey, Baron Alva's niece, by way of Seth and Jane. This is my sister Gwen, and cousin Chris and his brother Charlie, by way of Alex and Kathleen. We're pleased to be here not only as Baron Alva's nibblings, nieces, nephews, but also as fellow cat lovers. Although our whole generation, our whole contingent wasn't able to be here today, we're missing a few who are here in spirit and all watching on Zoom. So I just wanted to call out Gwen's husband, Hung Yi, Charlie and Chris's brother, Andrew, and Chris's wife, Sai. So all here in spirit. So Uncle Bear. Bear was Uncle Bear to so many, not just to the 6 of us cousins who had the joy of growing up with our sweet and silly Uncle Bear. As a child, I remember when I learned that he was fondly known as Uncle Bear by many of his students at Castellea, since he was such a warm and nurturing drama teacher to so many of those girls. At the time, I recall being struck with a pang of jealousy because I thought, hey, that's my Uncle Bear. That's my uncle. However, it didn't take much reflection to realize that Bear was such a profound and limitless source of love and play that I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't have any less of him. And in fact, the world was so much better for having an Uncle Bear in as many lives as possible. He lived his life to the fullest, somehow finding a beautiful balance between forever embracing his inner child while also exuding a soothing calm. A punmeister to the core, like his father, our Grandpa Bill, he would often sneak a pun into a conversation with a mischievous giggle and a glint in his eye for those who caught it while the conversation flowed on. When I texted back and forth with Uncle Bear, he often replied with singing emojis, as my dad alluded to, usually in his silly singing kitty or Jocko voice. The following is a mutually beloved song by Ingrid Michaelson, which he sent me a few months ago. Figured we should have Bear's voice as part of the music here today.
Oh, let's get rich and buy our parents homes in the south of France. Let's get rich and give everybody nice sweaters and teach them how to dance. Let's get rich and build a house on a mountain, making everybody look like ants.
He also, of course, had a beautiful singing voice when he wasn't playing Cat or Jocko, which occasionally accompanied his emoji messages as well. He shared the following with our family when we were at our shared family summer home in New Hampshire last summer, and I believe it was when there were just a few of us left celebrating Gwen and Hung Yi's anniversary.
Blessings on Gwen and Hung Yi, blessings on Carmen and Mip, on Ellie and Wesley, and may blessings shower on Jane and Seth, and may Kelsey always know her Uncle Bear's llama love. Bless all at Wheatfield and all that grows there. We are so grateful for all of this bountiful life grants us every day. Hi.
I was delighted I found those were still in our chats. When Bear was first diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and was about to undergo major surgery known as the Whipple procedure, I was feeling nervous and fairly distressed about the risks involved in his upcoming major surgery as well as the diagnosis itself. In true Bear spirit, I decided to try some meditation in an attempt to calm my nerves. To my delight and surprise, upon reflecting on all the worries swirling in my mind and my heart, I had an epiphany. I realized that every ounce of stress, fear, anxiety, any negative emotions were actually stemming from the fact that I just love Bear so incredibly much and therefore was simply just worried for him. The phrase, "it's all love," popped into my head since everything I was feeling was exactly that, just a whole lot of love for my uncle. That phrase or concept of "it's all love" has become a touch point for me ever since. And I believe it also sums up just about everything about how Bear lived and loved life.
One of the things that I will always remember about my Uncle Bear is his hugs. He was an amazing hugger with big arms to pull you close and squeeze just perfectly. I moved away from the Bay Area and never have quite made it back to California permanently. But whenever we reunited, it was always the same, perfect, just all-encompassing hug. When we would speak on the phone, when I was in Illinois or Massachusetts or living anywhere around the world, he would tell me that he was physically remembering those hugs and could just feel his arms around me, holding me tight, and I would close my eyes and just be right there with him, with his arms close around me, there in a hug of just endless love. And no matter how far apart he was always there for me, my whole life. Even if I couldn't be there next to him, he's always there. And I'm always going to have those hugs with me. He's always going to be there.
It's wonderful to be here to share in our memories of Uncle Bear and hear that those themes my father spoke of love and play, have been in all of our stories, in all of our remembrances. My only regret is that my wife, Sai, could not be here as she couldn't make the trip, sadly, today. And while I am thankful to my entire family for the kindness and love they have always shown Sai, I'm especially grateful to Bear and Alva for the ever-present warmth from the moment they met her, which they continue to show in our bi-weekly calls with Uncle Bear and Uncle Alva. Anyone who interacted with Bear knows that he had an almost magical ability to make you feel like you mattered more than anyone else in the world in that moment. Every day, he modeled that love to his nieces, his nephews, and his students alike. I think even I was surprised by how much love and affection he showed both me and Sai when he saw how important we were to each other as we were just beginning to come together. And I think that his enthusiasm made our connection that much more special. The suit that I'm wearing today, down to the tie, are the same ones I wore when he officiated our wedding 4 years ago. When we had first approached Bear to marry us, it was because we knew he would be a great MC for the event. He's a consummate showman. But he went far beyond just telling us we could kiss each other in front of our friends and family. In the weeks before the service, he reached out to speak with us on numerous occasions to learn more about what we loved about each other, what we were nervous about, what kind of union we saw in our future. Uncle Bear was part marriage counselor and part actor researching his role, so that when the wedding day came, he was truly the perfect MC, and the advice he gave for a happy partnership still feels true today. Every time I put on this suit, I get to smile. So, as we've all heard, Bear's legacy was all about making people smile, and not just for the moment you're with him, but smile and feel good about yourself and about other people. My descriptions so far probably sound like I thought of him primarily as this wise sage who preached the importance of love, and he was that, but he was also just goofy Uncle Bear. One of my first memories as a young boy of using the home landline telephone, for the first time, I was a big boy by then, and I could do it all on my own, was to call Uncle Bear because of how much fun he always was. And I did not reach him that day. Instead, I I got this voicemail, which I have never once for a day of my life ever forgotten, and which frequently plays in my head unbidden, a little surprise treat my brain plays. And it was word for word.
Meow, 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 meow. Bear, my master isn't home now. I am naughty, I'm his kitty. He's not home, it's such a pity. Leave a message at the beep. Now I go to sleep, meow.
Bear wanted even the strangers calling his phone to hear that, to know about his love of cats, his love of play. He made a point of being unabashedly fun-loving, and I think it is from Bear that I inherited my own love of play. Sorry, Dad. In the way that he shared it in person, on the phone, and even before it was the juggernaut it is today, on YouTube. And while I never quite mastered singing from him, I did inherit songs like this. So this comes from a video that he made for his singing cat, Dorothy Lamour Caperson. So, Kelsey, will you join me? All right, it was something along the lines of,
how to sing Carmen and how to make Jell-O, food that's from farming and how to spell yellow. Why every morning my masters drink Joe. These are a few of the things I don't know. Nuclear fission and psychokinesis, juice on my shoulders that kills all my fleeces, food that smells fishy but tastes really bland. These are some things that I can't understand when I'm catching juicy goldfish, 'cause I'm fast, not slow. My paw comes out empty, I fall in the pond, and that's because I don't know.
What I think we all do know is how special Uncle Bear was to each of us, and that we were special to him. He gave us lights that we carry around with us, much like this light here, every single day. So in that spirit, I encourage us to share those lights and feel Bear's boundless love continue to mold and shape the world into a better place.
Yeah, Bill.
A memorial service blends two kinds of music: a song of joy, celebrating the person who lived, and a song of sorrow, mourning the person we have lost. So today we feel split. While our hearts ache at Bear's departure, so do they swell, remembering the beauty he brought to life. Plato believed that beauty was a quality of the soul, and so it was with Bear. He responded naturally to what was precious because he was precious. He glowed with a joyful light and a celebration of all that life offered. Back in the 90s, I discovered a poem called "My Work is Loving the World." Bear and I were colleagues then, and I thought immediately how the title applied to Bear. Loving the world. That was his mission, his reason to be, except that he made loving the world seem more like play than work. Sometimes he had a certain look on his face, a very Bear look. expressing amazement and wonder that life could be so beautiful. In my mind's eye, I can see that look now. Those bright, dancing eyes, that beaming smile, radiating the joy of a child on Christmas morning. A tree might have dead leaves, but Bear responded to the grandeur of its shape. A song might have a sour note, but Bear heard the purity of the singer's intent. Storm clouds could fill the sky, but Bear would find the rainbow. He taught us by example how valuable it is to love the world, how important to feel the joy in life. He inspired us to try harder. Imagine Saint-Exupéry's Little Prince as a grown man. That was Bear. It was part of Bear's soulful generosity that he could always find beauty in others. That was key to his magic as a teacher, his value beyond measure to his school. He found the good seeds in his students, and to those seeds he was sunlight and rain. He was like the Wizard of Oz, who told the Scarecrow, the Lion, and the Tin Man that one precious secret. What they most wanted, they already had. Bear knew how to nourish. Not everything in Bear's life was sweetness and light. He suffered people poisoned with bitterness, crippled by hate, people who worshiped the golden calf. But whatever slings and arrows came at him, he fought as only a soul warrior does, using goodness to fight for goodness. Some battles he won, others he lost. But always he illustrated Socrates' conviction that a good person cannot be harmed because the only true harm could occur if a person ceased to be good. Bear embodied goodness from beginning to end. He continued to embrace his higher purpose of loving the world and the people in it. Tempted as I am to think we should honor Bear by trying to copy him, I know better. As the haiku master Basho said, don't follow in the footsteps of the old poets, seek what they sought. What Bear sought was to love the world. His prayer would be that we should seek that too, each in our own way. Listen to the words of Sappho speaking to us across 26 centuries. Some say cavalry and some say infantry is the supreme sight on black earth. Others say it is a fleet of long oars. But I say it is whatever one loves. Because Bear loved with a great and gentle heart, much was supreme in his sight. When his eyes fell on you, you felt present and alive. You felt that you mattered because to him you did. In the 20 years he was my colleague, just knowing he was somewhere on the campus was enough to keep me from feeling lonely. I know others felt the same. He is gone, but the gifts he gave us are alive today, in this room and far beyond. Here is a Mary Oliver poem called Wild Geese. I read it now in honor of Bear. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Bear Capron, actor, teacher, friend, husband, uncle, brother, sister, mensch, child, voice, angel. Always to be remembered, always to be loved, forever at home in the family of things.
To